Okay, so on text, what is text today? I think we live in a very interesting times regarding text. Yeah? Somehow today we write everything. Yeah? We write text, we write images, we write prompts, we write code, we write books, poems, scripts, ads, renders, worlds, and I would argue that we even write architecture. If you think this is fake, we print architecture. Yeah? Printing architecture everyone takes as common sense, but writing architecture everyone thinks this is strange. But printing and writing and reading, this is all a part of the same game. Yeah? Let's take one assumption, yeah, or one proposal, and try to think. What if words are alive? What if books are alive? What would that mean? Yeah? So, for instance, if things are alive, this would mean that they change according to a context. This would mean that, for instance, if you have a book of Aristotle and you put it in a library of biology, it will tell a different story than if you put it in a library of physics, or if you put it in a library of architects. Yeah? And I'm going to demonstrate how these things work. Yeah? What do I mean by this? What's interesting today is that whatever we do, in principle, in the digital, we have two types of media. You have text and you have image. And okay, you have audio. All these two or three types, we transform to numbers and then we work with numbers. But at the moment, with ChatGPT and with AI, text is becoming dominant. Yeah? So you literally write images, you literally write 3D models, and you literally write text. How to think about this this thing? So my argument would be that it's not anymore about writing a nice sentence, because a nice sentence is coming from the machine, but it's about how we organize different types of intelligences that we have in order to write. Something amazing happened in last 5 years. If you were interested in language, somehow language is something which is very, very difficult to capture. People have been trying to capture language or capture talking for a very long time. And a classic way, or when I was beginning with these topics, so then you had Google, and you had the classical guys. And these classical guys are represented, for instance, by this guy, Chomsky. Yeah? So this is the person, Noam Chomsky. He's a kind of an activist as well, political activist, but he made his early career on language. And he was the first one who kind of introduced a kind of computing towards language. But this computing that he introduced looks like this. Yeah? Let me find a nice image. Yeah? So it's kind of always it's about trees. Yeah? And it makes pre-assumptions that you have something which is called meaning, that you have something which is called structure, that you have something which is called meaning, structure, syntax. So in order to be masterful in language, you need to know the words, you need to know what these words mean, and then you need to know how these words work. So it means you need to know how to declinate, you need to know how to conjugate, you have different declinations, you have different conjugations, then you have past, perfect, you have syntax, all of these things, how you connect this stuff. Yeah? And you need to have dictionaries with the meaning and with language. Yeah? But when you want to put this into computer, the problem arises because you have so many exceptions. Yeah? This word is not really this conjugation, it's not that conjugation, and so on. So everything gets a little bit kind of complicated. And these too many of exceptions kind of don't let you capture the language in a proper way. And then what happens is that, for instance, Google guys, they were kind of in front with this kind of research. And this is one of their, so this is 15 years ago, or 10 years ago. But what this guy, in an implicit way, said, he said, I'm going to capture language, I'm going to outperform you guys who are organizing knowledge in trees and so on. I'm going to outperform you without knowing any grammar, without knowing any syntax, without knowing any meaning of any words. So nothing, yeah? And I'm going to outperform you. And this is what ChatGPT today is doing directly. Yeah? So you don't capture language anymore by having rules and having trees and grammars and syntax and meaning and these things, but you do it in a probabilistic way. Yeah? What does this mean? So for instance, like a nice image of this would be, how do you translate from English to German without knowing anything? There is one thing that you need to presuppose. You say, okay, I have a lot of books in English in one library, and I have a lot of books in German in another library. The only thing that I need to know is that the first book in English is exactly the same as the first book in German. They have the same meaning, it's the same book, it's the translation. And then if I have a lot of them, I will just look for the patterns inside, represent these patterns in a probabilistic way with numbers, and I will be able to translate from one to another without having any meaning, yeah? And any structure and any syntax. And this is exactly how all of this AI in principle work today. So one could argue that we went, so I think we need to distinguish two things. One is talking and one is language. So words in a way escaped language, and they had a great time in talking because they are not anymore bound with all of these rules and with all of these kind of things. Yeah? The implication of this is that they are in a way kind of alive, and since we don't know the meaning, we are in a kind of a tricky situation. What does it mean that these words have no meaning? Yeah? So how to put it in different way? So the great fall of meaning. The meaning is not intrinsic to the words themselves, but meaning is always contextual to the surrounding of the words. And the same goes with books. They are always relative to the context in which they behave. And this would be implicit for architectural objects, for video objects, for images, and for all of these things. Yeah? I personally love these three things. Yeah? This is kind of things that I love: text, textile, and architecture. And what's bringing these three words together is the text part. So architects, and text means it's a Greek word of bringing things together, of weaving things together. So text, weave things together. Textile is about weaving things together, and architecture as well is about weaving things together. So you can see here that there is a kind of a wisdom of language itself, which is intrinsic when you look at the etymology or the evolution, or in a way one could argue even the history of words and how do they behave. Yeah? So let's play with this a little bit. If we go in a traditional sense, what does that mean? I would say that words in a kind of a natural way or in a traditional way, they have two movements. Yeah, one is a kind of a horizontal movement through space, and the other movement is a vertical movement. This is across time. Yeah, if words move through space, this would be a kind of a topology of relations. This would be how do you translate from one language to another language, or for instance, how you look for synonyms of certain words. So for instance, if you go to Thesaurus, this is a kind of a dictionary of synonyms and antonyms, and if you write architecture, what are similar words to architecture? Building, construction, engineering, planning, architectonics. But this architectonics is actually a different one. This actually belongs here. This is composition, construction, style, constitution, formation, framework, makeup. Or if you go towards computer science, you have the architecture of computers, architecture of algorithms, and all of these things. So you already have kind of two different meanings of how these things, what they're about. If you want to figure out what architecture is about, you always need to look both for synonyms and the antonyms. Yeah. So architecture, what would be the antonym for architecture? Yeah? This is the opposite meaning. What is the opposite of architecture? Disorderliness, chaos, disruption, derangement, misorder. So we are going. You are starting to get the feeling of what this word is about. So it's about kind of about unfolding of a specific word. This is if we have it through languages and through synonyms and antonyms. Yeah, you are getting a kind of a meaning. If you want to see how this word behaves in time, what were the different meanings and implications of how this word moves through time, you go to another dictionary which is very beautiful. This is Etimo Online. And you can check what's happening there. Person skilled in the art of building, the architect. And it comes from French and from Latin, architectus, architecton, master builder, archichief, archon, so it's a kind of a master, and tex, to weave, to fabricate, to bring things together. Yeah? So you can find interesting stories about what words mean, which we usually don't take into account, yeah? But they are there. So that's a beautiful way to think about what words are about. Another thing for the vertical movement, this is the kind of archaeology of relations. One is etymology, and the other thing is kind of popularity of words. This is the engram. So you can see how words change their popularity through time. Yeah? This is very, very interesting. For instance, let's take two words, pope and alien. So this is a kind of a graph of popularity of these two words. Yeah? So the Google guys, they scanned all the books, and now you check the frequency of the word pope and the word alien. And you can see somehow that the blue line, the pope, is much more popular than the alien until 1895. From 1895 on, the alien takes over. Yeah? The pope loses popularity and alien takes over. The question is why? So now check around what's going on here that this shift is happening. So for instance, this is an interesting trigger for development of a story. What I'm trying to point out with all of this that I'm doing is how to look at language in a way that it helps you articulate your ideas. Yeah? So now we are concerned, for instance, with the topic of what is architecture and how to address architecture, but it could be any other concept that you choose that you want to work with. This is an interesting point for developing a specific argument. And this is what I've shown now, the synonyms and antonyms, the engrams and the etymology of words. This is something which is a kind of a history of words. It's their common habitat where they live. What happens with information technologies is that you can synthetically create these environments to play with words. And you can then tell different stories. So you can almost create synthetic worlds in which you put words and you look how they behave. And you see how all these things that I'm talking about are pointing to this liveliness of words and concepts. Of course, when we write texts, what is very important is that you give your texts good titles. Yeah? Think of what is a title. How do you name? How do you structure the text? What are the chapters? What are the names of the subtitles? How do you partition? Who is talking? Is it a kind of an Instagram post, or it's TikTok, or it's an SMS, or it's an essay, or it's a poem, or it's a treatise? Or think of what is the format and who is talking, the voice. Where is the voice talking? Is the voice the one that's on top, which is observing? This would be an analytical voice. Or it's the one always from within, which is the first person. Or it's kind of something else, yeah? What kind of references you put in your text? Who do you refer to? All of this gives a kind of a cloud or a cosmos that the one who reads gets an idea where you are coming from, yeah? Now what's happening if we think about this? What would be, for instance, what would be ChatGPT? Huh? What would this thing be? I would say that there are three beautiful and tricky things about ChatGPT. Huh? For me, the most beautiful way how to think about ChatGPT is to think of it as a common sense. Yeah? So what ChatGPT does, it gives you a kind of a common understanding of the world. It's trained on all textual data that we have, and it's a kind of an average of this thing. Yeah? But if you think, you know what is common sense? Common sense is something when you go to a bar and you sit with your friend and you talk, and then you kind of finish each other's sentences. It's this implicit thing that we all know, and we don't know what this thing is. Now imagine if someone told you that they are going to make an object out of it. How do you make an object out of common sense? I mean, for me, this is kind of something in 300 years when people will look back on our time, they will say, wow, these guys were crazy. They made an object out of common sense. And this object is ChatGPT. And this is not a science project, and it's not art project. It's both in a way. Yeah? It doesn't belong to one domain or the other. It's really a kind of a pre-modern thing, which is both art and science at the same time. And if you look, for instance, at the word art, the word art is a Latin translation of a Greek word, which is techne. And techne is technology, and art we think is art, and we separate art and technology. But in ancient times, art and technology were synonyms. In a different way, they were much closer in their meaning towards something that we call craft or craftsmanship, yeah? Art of doing things, something like this. But imagine now, to have an object which is common sense. I think this is something really magnificent and fantastic as a thing. Where is the problem? The problem is that this is the imperialist gesture. This is what we discussed a little bit before. We presuppose that this common sense is a common sense of the world, but not. It's a common sense of the West. Yeah? So the Chinese don't like ChatGPT in the sense that it's their common sense. They have another one, which is DeepSeek. So the problem is just if we say that this ChatGPT is not, that it's neutral. What we have to say that it's biased, and it's biased towards the West. And then it's okay. Then we work with it as a common sense of the West. And I think when we work with ChatGPT, this is something that we need to know. But if there is only one, this is a tyrannic setup. This means that we impose our common sense on the planet. So what we need a lot of different guys like this. So we need a Chinese common sense, we need a Latin common sense, we need a Russian common sense, we need the German common sense, we need the European common sense, we need a lot of them, and they need to be talking to each other. And then we can even push it, and I think this is where it's going. We are going to have ChatGPTs which are personalized. Yeah? We will come to this. For instance, Alice that you will work with, this is a kind of a personalized AI in this sense. Since, what is the implication of having a common sense? Is that it's a super glue. Yeah? So one thing is that it's an object, and the other thing is that ChatGPT, because it's a common sense, because it can finish our sentence, it can glue anything to anything. And this is another thing that you should use non-stop. So for instance, you can say, if I like this book and I like this movie, which song should I listen? And ChatGPT gives you the song. And then you say, if I love this book, this movie, and this song, give me a flower. And it will find, in the common sense of the West, relationship between these things, and it will be able to glue whatever you want to whatever you want. And I think this is a kind of a beautiful idea that you can work with, if you think of it. We have one project that I did with my colleagues, Augustino and Adil on ETH. This we call the 1001 Night, and this is exactly playing with this idea. Yeah? So we took 1001 Night, the book. It has a lot of stories, and we said we are going to do a scenography for each of those stories. And we are going to glue stuff together. So we will rewrite the main story into another story, then we will make a table for it, then we will make a window through which you look through, then we will find the flower, and we will find the fetish object, and we will find the song, yeah, for it. Give it a title and all these kind of things. And this is what you get. Huh? You get a specific song that goes with the table. This is what you see through the window. Hey, this is the adequate flower for it. And this is kind of a fetish object. Yeah? And this goes like this to infinity. You are just able to connect stuff. Yeah? You get how these things, when you look one, it's nonsense. But once you see 5 in a row, you're like, okay, it makes sense that there is something that connects this stuff. Yeah? What is behind this is this kind of mechanics. Yeah? Look at this. This is the structure of this thing. Yeah? So you make a kind of an Excel sheet through playing with ChatGPT. You click, and then all this book rewrites itself, unfolds, and makes all of these steps. Yeah? So what we have is a kind of a short version of the story. We have the main theme. We find a film which is attuned to this story. We extract the film character. We see who is the author. We rewrite the synthesis according to these things, give it a new title, find the 3 most characteristic words for it, give it a place, give it a time. We say what's outside of the window. We say what's on the table. We create prompts for Midjourney to do it. For the images, we select a style from specific artists that we like. We direct the whole thing through those directors. We look for a kind of an ambiental music that should go with it, find the song, and then we, through different types of songs, we create a flower, and we find the fetish object. We create and then some other things. But you see how in a mechanical, structured way, you organize tables in order to get what you want to have. And this is all done with different AIs. Yeah? So this is a combination of ChatGPT, Midjourney, and a little bit of coding. Yeah? That's the second important thing about ChatGPT. So the first thing, it's common sense made as an object, so that you know that you are always on an average of the West when you ask it. Second thing is, the beauty of it is that it can glue anything to anything, so use this non-stop. The third thing, which is a little bit problematic, is that it's infinitely soft and polite. Yeah? So you cannot provoke it. If you start arguing in a specific way that it thinks it's not politically correct, it just stops you, it blocks you. Yeah? So there is no way of moving further. Yeah? That's a kind of a thing that you also have to be aware that if you want to provoke it, you have to find ways how to provoke it. You need this kind of ways how to push it. But I think, for instance, when we say we need different kinds of ChatGPTs or different types of AI, would be nice to have one which is impolite.
Yeah.
You know, that you can train it in a way how you want to have it. What the other thing that it can do in a very beautiful way, and this is the craft of writing, when you write a text or a poem or whatever, you can choose the format, you can choose the voice, and you can choose the style. So once you have a text, you can say, okay, now write this text as a feminist journalist. Then you get this tone. Or write this text as Jerry Seinfeld, so that it's a little bit comic. Or write this text as Michel Serres, who is a famous philosopher. Or you can say, write this as if Michel Serres was Jerry Seinfeld. So you can change the tone, or you can say, write this text in passive, write it in active, make a poem out of it, do it in a Renaissance way like Shakespeare, whatever. Yeah? So this is not anymore a question of style. You don't have to be a Renaissance writer in order to be able to write sonnets. You just tell him, but the thing is that you need to give it input, you need to give it data that it can work with, and then you need to push it. And here comes an interesting thing, which is the second part of writing. How to give it a direction. So it needs this kind of a common sense, needs a certain direction, almost like a prism that can focus where it goes. And here we come with a kind of a balance to the common sense. This would be Alice. Yeah? Alice is a library or a search engine that you will be working with a lot. This one is tailored towards architecture students. So it has, as a set of data behind it, you have a Xenoteca library, and Xenoteca library holds books which are interested in architecture, which are interested in physics, mathematics, philosophy. Yeah? These are the things that I'm interested in. Yeah? So this will be a kind of a lens to focus the common sense of ChatGPT. And then by playing with two of them, I think you can articulate what you want in an interesting way, which is adequate for our times. I will give you a username and password for the library. The beautiful thing about this library is that when you go into the books, you can just click here PDF, yeah? You get a PDF of a book directly, you sign in and you get the manifestos, yeah? If you know programming, here you have a text file and you get directly only the text, so you can start playing with the text itself, yeah? So this will not be required in the studio, so don't worry about it. There is no need of programming, just that you get a feeling how to work with text and how to work with words. Yeah? Here you can change the different libraries or different bodies of thinking to get ideas how concepts move when they are in different setups. Yeah? So for instance, if we say, we are in Xenoteca library, which is the big library with all the books from here, and we ask it what is architecture. Yeah. So the first thing that you get is a list of sentences from the whole library that are, let's do it like this with find, that have the syntax architecture is inside. So if you are interested in what is architecture, and you have a library with architects writing, you will get different ideas of what is architecture. Hayes says this is architecture. Yeah? It's not architecture, but building in drag. Everything is architecture. I'm not sure about this. Look at this one. Architecture is a key to everything. These are all kind of a little bit too strong. Architecture is not innocent. That's interesting. The architecture is fresh but empty. That's nice. Architecture today is world architecture. So for instance, if we like this one the most, you can check what's the context of this word, this sentence. You get 3 before, you get 3 after. And if you want to work with it, you just copy it. Yeah, and then you can paste it wherever you want. Yeah? And then you can, for instance, collect your favorite sentences on architecture. Just by having, for instance, 20 sentences on architecture that you think are cool, you will get a certain understanding or a certain articulation of what architecture might be. Now, if this is the library of all the books from Xenoteca, we can, for instance, we can look at, this is a kind of a galaxy of concepts from this big library. So these are all the words from that library, and we can look what is architecture here about. Here is architecture. Huh? And if you look now, what is architecture here? The idea of what is architecture here is not defined in a strict terms, but it's kind of indexed by other words. So it's indexed by modernist, pragmatic, zeitgeist, pop, postmodernist, modernism, Angeles, Kenneth, Calling, utopian, expressionism, Dada, Warhol, Duchamp, rationalism, historicism, and so on. And now you think, okay, if these are words around, what does that mean? And if you look at here, what does that mean? This means that this architecture is surrounded by the vocabulary of architects, by different architectural styles, which is modernist, pragmatic, zeitgeist, and this kind of stuff, and by main actors, which is Kenneth Frampton or Colin or Manfredo Tafuri or John Hayjock, Eisenman, and so on. So here are the figures, and here are the styles. Yeah? The interesting thing happens if we change the library. Yeah? If we put another library, then the concept of architecture will change. Here you can check what are the books in this library. This is a list of all the books. Yeah? If we go to another library, for instance, this is a very nice library of Michel Serres' friends. This is a library of complicated thinkers. Yeah? These are the French post-structuralists and their friends. These guys are super beautiful and sophisticated if you are interested in more complicated stuff. And if we go here and look for what is architecture, look at now how the context is different. Yeah? Permanence, sentence, succession, group, rule, valid, theoretical, rediscover, uncover, normative description, option, formation, materiality, discourse, formulation, rule, validity, phenomena. You get the feeling it's not anymore this kind of architecture of modernism, postmodernism, utopia, and so on. This is architecture of weaving things together, putting things together. It's another mood of this thing. And the point is that by creating specific databases, by biasing them in specific directions, you get different moods. Yeah? You get different contexts, and you get a different kind of flavor of what this word might be about. Yeah? So these are the galaxies of concepts. The beauty of Alice is that you can create synthetic galaxies of concepts. You can find sentences and words and moods for architecture that you like. And then with ChatGPT, you can kind of industrialize them, give them flavors, formats, push them, figure out what you want to have with them. And this is a kind of a way how one should write. Yeah? How do we now combine, for instance, ChatGPT and Alice together? Yeah? So, for instance, with writing of this text, I wanted to play with this, and I said, okay, I'm gonna write 100 poems on architecture from different perspectives, yeah, and I'm gonna do it automatically. So I don't want to write; I just want these things to happen, and to get it, I'm gonna combine. And I think here it gets very interesting. So we will not get to this level in the studio, but just conceptually that you get an idea how this might work. Is that then you create, you use something which is called API. Yeah? APIs are a way how to get to ChatGPT and how to get to Alice from a programming environment. And this programming environment looks slightly like this. Yeah? So if we have Alice, And you can see here, to ask a question, we say, what's the topic of conversation? We say, what's the brain? What's the library? And we are asking, what is the query? So architecture, architecture is, and library. And if you look at here, in the URL, what we have is the name of the library. This is this one. We have the topic, which is this one. Yeah? And we have the query, which is this one. Yeah? So we can get this thing just by creating a URL. And then when we send this question to Alice, what we get back is this thing here. Yeah? Let me show you this. I think this is kind of interesting. This is the API call. Yeah? So this is basically what I'm asking to the server. And the server gives me back this thing here. And then this thing here is rendered into this thing. The problem with this is that this is dirty. Yeah? So here you have, you see, the index, the weight, the slug, then this thing, and then the URL, and you have this. So you don't know exactly where is the sentence. You need to clean it. Yeah? So then you do a little bit of coding. So here we ask the question, and we can try to do it directly here. Let's just put here 3 and 3, and we will go and ask Alice now, what is architecture? Yeah? Now we are asking this question directly to Alice towards the server. Yeah? Doom. So it says it has 37 pages, but we are going to use only 3. Now give me all the answers. Yeah? So now it's going to go here until 3. And then you need to clean it. Yeah? Once we clean it, then from this thing which is dirty, you get a clean thing. Yeah? So here now you have, this is the same thing, just when you clean it, you have the name of the book and the name of the author, and then you have the sentence, and then you have the name of the book and the author, and then you have a sentence. Yeah? And it goes like this until the end. So this is something that ChatGPT can understand. So I can send him this thing. I think ChatGPT could understand even this, but I would use a lot of textual space just for this strange stuff. Yeah? And now we call, from here we call with an API, OpenAI, we call ChatGPT, and we say to ChatGPT, look, you will be given a list of sentences in the following format: book author, book name, sentence from the book. Your task is to find the most interesting, punchy sentences and list 50 short sentences, so we get a kind of 50 statements on architecture. Format is this. Do not modify any quotes or references. Yeah? And now when I run it, I'm going to get, so this is from before, I'm going to get this. These are 50 sentences on architecture. Yeah? But what I did in the paper itself, instead of saying this thing, I told him, make a poem. Make an interesting poem on architecture from a specific perspective. Yeah? What I got from there, these are 100 poems on architecture. So it gives it a title. It says, on architecture from the perspective of time, done with the library of Sayre's friends. And this is all done in an automatic way. These are the references that we are saying. And this is a combination of ChatGPT writing from the perspective of a specific library and a specific topic. And he says, writing has killed architecture. And yet the drawing keeps talking. Time keeps the building alive as a joke that refuses to end. To see space demands time. Do not kill time. In the background is a piece of classical architecture. In the foreground, deadlines lean like scaffolds, comic and severe. The plan repeats the plan and calls it present. Rome is rock. It is object. It has time. It makes time and requires time. Time, but time which has already rolled up, rounded itself at the same time as it was splitting. We stack hours like floors and floors like hours, until time itself becomes a hallway that turns back on its turn. The architecture must find its justification in the deep intention of the essay. And then you look who is here. Yeah? For instance, this guy, Foucault, this is the bald guy from the beginning of the day. So he is helping us now. We are writing in someone else's terms. We are writing through the words of others. We are writing by combining different intelligences. We are in a kind of a Renaissance workshop that helps us to ask very funny and nice questions. What is architecture from the perspective of time? What is architecture from the perspective of energy? What is architecture from the perspective of music? From the perspective of future, from the perspective of gender, and so on. Yeah? And in order to do this, to play this kind of games, you organize constellations like I'm trying to show you now. Yeah? To get there, again, you create a kind of an input. Yeah, you need to give. Then what's interesting with this stuff is then you create a loop around this that it goes forever. Yeah? Once you create a loop, you need to give it a kind of an input with which it can work. Where is the input? The input is here. As an input to this thing, this is the input. I'm telling it, this is the library, this is the topic, and this is the query. Now do this with all of this. Yeah? Bam. Yeah? So what with Homer's friend, architecture from the perspective of war, sea, hero, sword, shield, ship, sin, grace, faith, sound, church. Yeah? With the change of the library, you change the body of knowledge, and with the topic, you change the specific perspective. You use the specific of Alice and Xenoteca, and you use the general and common sense of the ChatGPT, and then you just glue it and push it to infinity. So this is a kind of mechanics of working. Yeah? The interesting thing now, just a small digression on another text that I wrote, and then I think we end in a very, very short. So the Japanese pavilion, yeah, the people from the Japanese. I want to show you with 1001 Night. This was one mechanics. With the poems, it's another mechanics. And then, for instance, the Japanese pavilion at the Venice Biennale. They called me and they said, can you write a text on the pavilion? Yeah? And I was like, okay, I will do it. It's an honor for me. I like this. And they're around AI stuff. So I said, okay, let's do it. And then how do you write a text without writing the text? Yeah? In a funny way. These guys, this is what it's there, and the beauty there is that they also played with AI, and they also had as a premise the idea that objects talk. So the parts of the pavilion talk with humans, and humans talk, and there is a whole beautiful story which I'm very, very sympathetic to. Yeah? So I like this idea, and I think that's why they called me, because there is a kind of an energy that we are talking about same kind of things. Yeah? And I was thinking, okay, what do I do? How do I write this text about this pavilion? So I went to Venice. I went through the whole Biennale, and somehow I was like, okay, so my scenarios. Then I thought of a structure how I do it. I said, okay, Alice goes to Venice, and she checks what's happening in Venice. Yeah. And then this is what Alice found. The Venice Architecture Biennale was about a bit like stepping into a group therapy where everyone had role-played as a houseplant. There was moss walls whispering sweet nothings about carbon capture, robotic arms awkwardly folding napkins into corners, and a group of well-meaning Europeans convinced that empathy and climate could be flat-packed like IKEA furniture. The main pavilions seem adrift in algae, both metaphorically and at times literally. Carlo Ratti gave a keynote that rang out with enthusiasm, photosynthesis, as if that alone could anchor meaning. Yeah? So you get my feeling of towards what's happening in Venice comes because I went there to check all of these things to get a feeling how to write this text. in this whole setup, the beauty of Japanese pavilion was that it went beyond this kind of climate change and this kind of pushing for strange things like all the other pavilions were pushing in a way. This political correctness and saving of the planet. This is so boring. Like I don't have anything. I mean, political correctness is a catastrophe in general. Saving the planet is not. But when everyone is only talking about this in the same way, non-stop, it's just unbearable. You cannot tell me something interesting. And these guys were just telling an interesting story. And then I said, okay, Alice will invite Japanese pavilion to Xenoteca, and they will have a party there. And I will just observe and talk about what's happening at this party. And this is what I did. Then I went and I asked the Japanese guys, give me all the texts that you are working with for the pavilion, and I will do my coding with them. And the other thing which was interesting is that the Japanese pavilion has a very, I have the link here, has a very nice website. They have a kind of a database of all the exhibitions that ever happened there. And about each exhibition, they have a kind of a small text and a small and a few pictures. So for instance, if we are with architecture, here you have 2025, 23, 25, 18, 16, and then when you click on each one, you get the pictures and you get a short text. And I was like, fantastic, because I always need data. When I work, I need data, and with data, then I can tell stories, interesting stories. So what I did, I make a program, collect all the data. This is all the data from there. So for instance, if we are with architecture, these are the pictures from 1991. This is 1991, what's happening there. And I also asked ChatGPT to give me a short description of the pictures and give me 3 keywords and a short description of this thing. And then I just put all of these things together. Then I get a body of text which is about Japanese pavilion, but from the historical perspective. I get all the exhibitions that ever happened in this pavilion, and I say this is character number 1, and the character number 2 is the current one. And then I get a kind of a perpendicular setup, the history and the present, each one character. Each one has a specific why. This is the way how then you need to kind of characterize them. What are they about? So the void in between, that's the current one. And it's about the human, the whole, the wall, the pavilion, the garden, the space, the dialogue, architecture, blah, 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 all of these things. And what it says implicitly, I'm from everywhere. I have many points of view. I am a complicated beast. This is how it looks at the whole library of Xenoteca. And here is another one. This is the Japan Meta Venbi. This is the historical one. And if you look at the words here, it's exhibition, work, biennial, pavilion, architecture, Japan, Venezia, installation, participatory, theme, trend. So it's interesting to look at text just as clouds of words. What do they mean? And now if we put, like what we had before, when we looked how words were coming together, one can also look how books come together. And when I put the Japan Meta Venbi and Japan Void in between into the library of Xenoteca, the beautiful thing that happened was the Japan Void in between came to all the books that I like. And it came to all the books that actually I was working with and that actually I was writing as well. So for instance, Dole, Savage, and Bullman, this is my co-supervisor for the PhD. This is my supervisor for the PhD. I have an article in this book. I have an article in this book. These are my favorite books that I like. So kind of we are in the same conceptual space, which was obvious. Like that's why I love the whole thing. we are in the same place. Deleuze and Guattari, the best guys ever. Yeah? On the other hand, here is Japan Meta Venbi, which is a historical character. And who is around it? Only the guys that do history. Hayes, architectural theory since 1968. Yeah, Widler, Eisenman, the end of classical, modernity unbound, collage city, this kind of stuff. So you immediately get these books are different. Yeah? And in between two of them is my book. Yeah, exactly halfway. Me and Kengo Kuma, anti-object. Yeah? Like, I mean, it's funny that you can create these kind of synthetic environments and you can get personally involved with all of this. And then things get interesting and beautiful, and you are not anymore on an analytic level, but you're on a synthetic level where you do and project things. Yeah? And then once we have one who is analytical and historical and the other one who is quantum and synthetic, now at this party, they start to talk to those books. And then I invent a scenario in which they are talking. Yeah? So this is now their part 3. They come at Xenoteca. So part 1 is Biennale and the problem. Part 2 are the characters. And part 3 is the party. And on the party, I discuss through these two perspectives, so through analytical conservative perspective and through quantum synthetic perspective, what is AI and architecture. So you could argue that, for instance, now the next step for me would be to build a pavilion for this thing, but the pavilion is already built, which is the Japanese pavilion. Yeah? So the Japanese pavilion would be a representation or would be a part of the same thing. Yeah? And in a way, here, when I make the dialogues, I make the dialogues with the quotes of other people. So it's not me putting my opinion directly, but it's me articulating my opinion through the positive and through the negative by using other people's words and sentences. Yeah? So it's a kind of a meta game. But you get what different complicated strategies, symmetries, mechanics you invent in order to write a text. And then I think this is, in my understanding, this is a way how you write in a contemporary way. Huh? And I want to show both perspectives and so on, and play different games. So imagine now someone asks you to write a text and you give him something like this back. Huh? It's funny, and the Japanese people liked it. I thought they will send me to hell, you know. They were like, "You're crazy, go to hell." But actually, they liked the whole thing, which was funny. Yeah? Now, the last thought, just to add another layer and another game to the whole story. So this thing, with which I started, is a text that I wrote for Chinese people. Yeah? And I was writing these 100 poems on architecture, and I was like, but I'm not going to write now a scientific paper, you know, with proper arguments how I write it. That's so boring. It has to be the format and the content, they need to fit. They need to fit in a proper way, and I'm not writing it by hand. I was like, how do I write it? So this is, again, ChatGPT is good when you give it data. Yeah? And this is how I wrote the paper itself. So this part, so the whole text of this paper that writes the poems is written in a way that I went, super. So I went to ChatGPT, look, I need to write a scientific paper for a journal. It's about architecture, computation, actually how architects should write in the 21st century. Here is my abstract. This is what I wrote. Yeah? So I gave him the structure of the chapters. I told what each chapter is about. And then, since I've spent so much time on my YouTube channel, yeah? So you record all this lecture like I'm recording now, and I put it there and so on. I wanted to use this in a way. And then I said to ChatGPT, look, I will give you some of my YouTube videos to expand the material and some of my previous works. I will give you 4 different texts. First, collect all of them one by one, and then give me extended chapters. Yeah? And then I went to the YouTube channel, And this is fantastic. I love this working with text. And now these technologies, all of this just works. So for instance, I have my lectures here, and I said, I think I said, I want this one. Yeah. So this is me 1 hour talking about the book that I wrote. And if I go here, edit video, I go subtitles. Look at this. I get the full transcript of the text in 1 second. Yeah, bam. Control, copy, paste, and I have the whole lecture, it's basically a serious text written. Yeah, I put it to ChatGPT. I go to another lecture, put it to ChatGPT. I go to another lecture, put ChatGPT. I go to another paper that I wrote, put it to ChatGPT, and say, bam, now do it. Then he writes the whole thing. And then I spend 1 week editing it. Yeah? So it's not that it writes and I'm done. I spend another week with it. But the starting point from going from 0 to a text of 6,000 words that I can work with is 3 hours. Yeah? I get the body of text, and then I start working with him paragraph by paragraph, polishing, and basically in 1 week I have a proper text of 6,000 words, which works in a proper way. And this is this whole thing. And then at the end of the paper, I write a meta chapter, yeah, where I say how I wrote this paper. Of course, the Chinese and the editors and everyone got pissed, so I have a lot of problems with this, because nobody writes like this and they think it's not proper and it's wrong and so on. But I cannot help myself. I like these games and I think this is the proper way, and they are wrong and not me. Yeah? I think people, you need to believe in things that you do. Yeah? And this is basically what I wanted to tell you about how to write today. So the main point is, it's not about writing a nice sentence. It's about creating a constellation. So we are in a Renaissance setup. I'm Michelangelo, and I have my workshop, and I have my AIs who are there for me. I know the strengths of each one. I know that the ChatGPT is good in gluing. It's good in styling stuff. It's good with working with APIs, so doing a lot at the same time. I have my Alice, which supports my thinking through the libraries and books that I have. I have my YouTube as a repository of my thinking explicitly. And now I have my computing environment of Mathematica, and I put all of these things together in order to create an interesting text. And this is how, for instance, for the Japanese pavilion, I literally wrote it like this. Contributors are Miro, the direction, Japanese pavilion, the data set, Alice, semi-fictional librarian narration, ChatGPT, neural stylist, Wolfram Mathematica, the structuralist, Notebook ML, the log keeper, hosted by Xenoteca, and in between. Yeah? So this is what writing today is. It's about organizing these constellations, and through organizing and exploring through ChatGPT and Alice, you get a vector of what you want to do, and once you know this, basically you click enter, things happen, then you take them and work with them in a serious way. So it's not about making things automatic. It's about using the current state-of-the-art stuff in order to help you articulate things in a way which were not possible before. Yeah?